Friends, very happy morning to all of you. I welcome you all on this fine Sunday, the last day of the month, 31st January, where we are having a CP meeting under GST. It's a unique topic, I will say, the topic which has not been covered for quite some time or by quite some POUs. The departmental GST audits and appeal mechanism under GST. When I was discussing with the speaker, I told the routine ones already get covered and they keep getting covered in the subsequent months also. So why don't we have something which will be relevant for the members and as well as something unique which kind of break the monotony. So we were fortunate enough to get a different topic with a wide experience she has in indirect taxes, and especially the today's topic. We'll be very happy to listen to the beloved speaker and get the knowledge enriched. So before I request the speaker to address the gathering, I will request C. Abhishek Murli to kindly formally introduce the speaker.
Thank you, Chairman. A very good morning to all the participants. It's a pleasure to introduce the speaker today, CA Radhika Verma. She's the indirect taxation partner of a leading firm and has more than 10 years experience in handling indirect taxation matters. She's also worked with a multinational company in Hyderabad, and she's a regular speaker and an ardent speaker on indirect tax subjects, and is the only woman accredited training partner of the ICAI from the NACEN, or rather the National Academy of Customs, Excise and Narcotics, the training wing of the Government of India for indirect taxes. She has successfully implemented GST in India, VAT in the UAE for very large companies and medium-sized organizations as well. She is also the partner of a very dynamic and beloved Central Council member, CA Dayaniva Sharma. So this is only a brief introduction about ma'am. She has not shared a profile with us, being she said she wants to go directly into the presentation. So thank you so much, ma'am. You're someone who definitely is very dynamic and very happy to have you with us. So we welcome you, ma'am. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Yeah, over to you,
Thank
Radhika.
you. Yeah, thank you, Jain Saab, Chairman SIRC, and Abhishek ji, Secretary SIRC. It gives me an immense pleasure to be presenting on GST topic for SIRC, and also with all the cheerfulness with which you have introduced me has indeed made my Sunday a wonderful day, Murli ji. Thank you so much, audience, for gathering on Sunday. And I was actually having my doubts when Jain called and said that we need to have a session on GST, and it has to be on Sunday at 11 a.m. So I actually paused for a brief moment and I said, are you talking about GST on a Sunday morning? Do you think audiences are going to gather? So he was very confident that absolutely you don't have to worry about that. And I think by looking at the numbers, the attendees who have joined, I can only say that as chartered accountant, the learning never stops. It absolutely never stops. Come what may, whatever may be the circumstances which we and the profession is facing today, we are yet always excited to learn something new and to become better and better every day. And that is what gives me the most excitement about being a chartered accountant. So thank you, audience, for joining. And sir, I'll start with my presentation now. I'll share my screen.
Yes.
Could you just confirm if the presentation is visible?
Yeah,
Yes.
perfect.
Okay, great. So friends, today's topic is departmental GST audits and appeals and revisions under GST. A lot has been talked about GST audit by chartered accountants over the last few years. But now I think is the time we also understand from the perspective of department as to what GST audit means and what are the procedures laid down under the law, etc. We look into the more practical aspects of it than the theoretical aspects of a GST audit from the department perspective. And that is more so because it is an immense opportunity for chartered accountants to also handle departmental GST audits. Like we've been handling the GST audits under Section 35(5) as a chartered accountant, I think we can also grab this opportunity to assess our clients, to assist the assessees in handling the departmental GST audits. What are the various services which one can give from the perspective of departmental GST audits? One of the most important service, according to me, would be to do a pre-audit prior to the department coming to the assessee's site. Now, that pre-audit could also include filling of the checklist, which are mandatory as per the department to be provided by the assessees, and also to go into a little more detailed about the assessee's nature of business, etc., so as to give them a heads up in terms of what are the tentative exposure areas, if any, in the departmental GST audit. Apart from that, I think the department always would encourage somebody who knows the law to actually be present during the audit. So that can be one more leg of area where you can represent the client during the GST audit proceedings which happen at the client location or offsite at the departmental location. Now, after giving this set of services, the next set of services which could come into play is to make a representation for the GST audit report which has been issued by the department. So normally the process is to issue the spot memo once the audit is concluded by the department, and you can actually start the services in terms of representation and litigation services from this very stage. And that would mean that you would try to represent the client before the GST audit authorities, especially where the cases are above the threshold of 1 crore of tax. What we have seen is that the department authorities are giving a pre-consult to the assessee before issuance of the show cause notice. So therefore, you can prepare the reply for the spot memo and do the representation during a pre-consult meeting before the department. So this is one set of services which can be provided by a chartered accountant from the departmental GST audit perspective. Now, having said so, what is that we are going to see today? Today, I would like to bring to you in terms of what are the numbers of departmental GST audits that have started or are going to start. So how has the department categorized the assessees in terms of risk categorization and their turnover for the purposes of doing GST audit? And we'll have a brief understanding of the GST audit manual issued by the Director General of Audit under GST. So we look into these practical aspects, and we all know that after the GST audit has been initiated, and if there are any adverse findings against an assessee, then you commence on your journey of the assessment under GST, which then goes on to appeals mechanism before first appellate authority, the second appellate authority, High Court and Supreme Court under GST. Now, one important feature under GST, unlike the service tax and the central excise regime, I say so because revision under GST is something which has been taken from the state VAT laws. You did not have these kind of provisions under the service tax or the central excise law. So therefore, revision under the GST also makes this entire process a little complicated in terms of assessment proceedings for a client, and therefore can be a good opportunity in terms of getting equipped about the knowledge of what are the various appeal and revisions provisions under the GST. So let us look into first from the departmental audit perspective. Now, the departmental GST audit, there are two types of audit. One is a general audit, which is conducted by the departmental officers. And apart from that, the commissioner may in certain cases order for a special audit by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant. However, we are not going to look into the special audit at this point of time, because as the topic suggests, it is the departmental GST audits, the audits by the department authorities under section 65 of the CGST Act. So audit by the department can be initiated at the order of the commissioner, by commissioner himself, or by an officer authorized by the commissioner. Now, this order can be a general order or can be a specific order in case of a client. So therefore, by a general order, the department may say that, okay, we are going to take up the audit of the assessees, and these are the a list of the assessees who are going to be audited. A general order to do the audit by the commissioner is issued. Now, once that general or a specific audit by the commissioner is issued, there is a notice which has to be issued under form GST ADT 01, at least 15 working days prior to commencement of the audit. So GST ADT 01, which is issued by the department, is a notice for conducting audit by the department, and this is the first stage in the departmental audit proceedings. Now, once the GST ADT 01 is issued, the department would ask certain documents from the assessees, and these documents have to be presented within the time frame given in the notice, or you may seek an extension where the requirements are extensive. You can seek a written extension from the department. Now, once you have submitted the documents, the audit proceedings must conclude within 3 months from the date of commencement of the audit. Now, the term commencement of audit is subjective. So therefore, it has been specifically defined in the law to say that the commencement of audit is only going to happen once all the documents are submitted by the assessee, or the visit to the assessee premises has been started. So within 3 months from that date, the audit proceedings should necessarily conclude in terms of issuance of final audit report in GST ADT 02. Now, there are two things. So the GST ADT 02, which is your final audit report, should be issued of the audit. So therefore, if you look into from the perspective of department, they have 3 months to complete the entire audit in terms of the commencement of the audit and conclusion of the audit. While there is no specific date given as to what can you take as the conclusion of the audit proceedings, but yes, they have said that what is commencement of audit. So from there, I think 3 months you should compute. That should be the conclusion of the audit proceedings. And from there, 30 days, they should issue a final audit report in GST ADT 02. Now, this is the theoretical aspect of the GST audit which we are looking into. We look into more practical aspects of GST audit as we proceed. Now, GST audit can be undertaken. Just one moment.
You can just try tapping the enter button to see if the screen is moving, Radhika ji.
Yeah, I'm actually my presentation is hid because of the video, so I'm just trying to move that.
Press the arrow button and get back to that.
Yeah, I tried
Press the
doing
arrow
that.
button, or you can click the GoToWebinar tab at the bottom.
Just one moment, please.
Or you can use Alt
Is it
tab
still
and
visible now? Now it's visible, right? The screen?
yeah, it's visible. Just try to move if it is going to the next screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So now in terms of the GST audit, under section 65 must be conducted of a registered person. So therefore, somebody who is not registered under GST, the proceedings for them cannot start under section 65. Those would be a different proceedings which will be undertaken by the department. Now, the period for which the GST audit can be done can be 1 or more financial years, or it can be also for part of the financial year. So it is not important or necessary that the officer should audit you for a full financial year. They may want to audit you for even a part of the financial year, which is also very much allowed now under the GST provisions. The GST audit can be done at such frequency as may be convenient to the department or as may be required by them. So it is not that if you are audited once, then you cannot be audited at least for the next 1 or 2 years. So that kind of a leniency is not there in the law, and it totally depends on the risk.
I think we have lost the connection.
Yes, it seems fast
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, we'll just wait for a moment if the connection comes back, or we'll talk to the speaker. Selva, I think you can call the speaker.
Yes, it says offline here, so I'll just speak.
Yes, you can speak and inform them. So there are some technological challenges. Technology has its own advantages and disadvantages. Friends, a small announcement I thought I'll make. Tomorrow on 1st February, evening 7 p.m., we are having a Union Budget 2021 discussion, which is being paneled by C.R. Bhupati sir, our past president, and CA advocate Raghuraman from Bangalore, who will be taking care of the indirect tax proposals. We request everybody to register in advance because there is a limit on the numbers. I'll be sharing the link shortly in the chat box. So I'll request all the members to kindly register for that program as well, whoever wants to take benefit of that. Just given the details of tomorrow's program, along with the link where you can directly register without going through the SARC login. So I request members to take benefit of this as well. And then we have another program on 3rd of February, where we'll be covering the direct tax proposals detailed analysis by CA Ved Jain, our past president.
I spoke with the speaker, sir. Ma'am said her laptop seems to be got stuck or hanged up, it seems so. And also it
Let her
says
restart.
offline, so she'll be reconnecting in 5 minutes maximum.
Okay. So just put this message in the chat as well.
I'll make you presenter also if you can share screen if you want to.
No, there is nothing for me to scan. Share, Selva. Thank you. I will also draw the attention of all the members where all the past programs of SARC we have put in the SARC website. So members who want to take benefit of that also can get into the SARC website and also the YouTube channel of SARC of ICI. I'll share the link of the past programs in the chat box so that people who want to see the programs which they have missed, they can kind of watch it at their convenience. And the resources, the materials for all the programs are also shared in the same web page which I have just shared to all of you. Yeah, I think we have the speaker back. Radhika, you'll have to switch on your audio, Radhika ji. Your mic, if you can switch on. Radhika ji, are you able to hear me?
Yeah, am I audible now, sir?
Yes, perfect, perfect. You're audible now. You can share the screen again.
Yes, just one moment. My
Yeah, yeah.
computer, for some reason, is slow. Or Selva, is it possible for you to share the screen? I'm not sure why my system has suddenly gone so slow.
You have multiple tabs open on your browser, right? That is the main reason. So, if possible,
Okay.
in just
Let
have
me
your
check
PPT
if I-
and this thing. It seems the Teams is also running at the back end, it seems so.
The Teams actually, yeah, there is some technical issue with that. It keeps.
Yeah, that might also will take a lot. Let it load, man, no problem.
So the load of GST, the system is also not able to withstand actually.
Yeah, let alone the professions. Yes, I did give my disclaimer to you, Jen Saab, at the beginning that there could be technical
Totally
glitches.
understand. The members also totally understand of the technological hiccups actually, and that too when it comes to GST.
Yes, GST. Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I hope now it's visible. Correct?
Visible and you're audible. Perfect. We are good to go.
Okay. Okay. Great. So while I was discussing about section 65, I said that there will be a notice which will be issued in form GST ADT 01. The form of that notice is available under the CGST rules. And this is how the notice actually looks like, and it is prescribed under rule 101 sub rule 2. So therefore, the auditor who's going to come with the group or the concerned superintendent is going to issue a notice to you stating that whereas it has been decided to undertake the audit of your books of accounts and records for the financial years dash to dash. So therefore, they can, as I said, they can take up multiple financial years, especially because of the lag of time that we are facing today for 17, 18 and 18, 19, where we have almost completed the filing of 18, 19 annual return. It is more than likely that the audit of the financial year 17, 18 and 18, 19 might be taken up together. Subsequently, the rule was also amended to say that they can do an audit even for part of the financial year. Now, this is the final audit report which the auditor is supposed to issue under the prescribed rules. And it says that your books of accounts and records are audited and has been examined. And this audit report is prepared on the basis of information available, documents furnished by you. And the findings are as under. So therefore, whatever are the shortcomings of tax, interest and penalty is issued by a final audit report. We will also look into practically how the things move at the departmental end also, so that you are able to be well versed when you are speaking with your clients. Now, there is this file number which was issued by Director General of Audit Indirect Taxes. The Director General of Audit Indirect Taxes is a separate wing in the department, in the GST department, which looks into the audit from both GST and customs perspective for the central government. Please note, as of now, there is no audit which has been started specifically, or an audit manual which has been issued by the state governments. However, different state governments may have a different protocol, and we are yet to know the practical ground reality in terms of that. Once if you are audited by a central tax officer, can a state officer audit you? So these are not clear. However, these are promises made by the finance ministers over the time that you will not be audited more than once, but there is no specific embargo in the law. You can be audited by a central departmental officer and you can be audited by a state departmental officer, and there is absolutely no binding on the officers. In fact, one state which I came to know through the interaction with the department at least is in that Andhra Pradesh, the state government has already started, the state department has already started to do the audit on their own as well. Now, the DG audit basically has developed certain technological softwares to actually categorize and the assessees into large, medium and small, and the risk categorization of these assessees. So as per the DG audit manual and this letter which was issued by the Director General, the large taxpayers are those whose turnover are greater than 40 crores. So any of your clients who are greater than 40 crores, and the threshold here is aggregate turnover and not the taxable turnover. So greater than 40 crores, including exempt and non-GST supply, will be taken into consideration when you say it is a large taxpayer. A medium taxpayer would be in bracket of 10 to 40 crores, and a small taxpayer would be less than 10 crores. I believe the fractions have been given for the part of 17-18, because 17-18 we had GST only from July 2017 to March 2018, 9 months. So the part fractions have been given for those 9 months. Now, if you look into the number of audits which the department has started in terms of the large commissionerates in the country, if you look from Mumbai perspective, they have started audit of more than 5,000 plus assessees, of which 1296 are large assessees. Similarly, in Delhi and Bengaluru also, the numbers are substantial. If you go through this letter which I have given here, the reference, you can find in detail for each of the commissionerate how the the large, medium and small clients have been, assessees have been divided into different audit groups. So this will give you a clear idea in terms of what is going to be the scope of departmental GST audit and this is only for action plan for 1920, which obviously got deferred due to COVID-19 and will be taken up now. So this is the structure in which the audit is being done by the department. Now, if you look at this perspective, they also have stated in the circular that it is advised that initially only those taxpayers should be selected for audit who have filed their annual return in GSTR 9. So selection should be only of those taxpayers who have filed their annual return. If sufficient number of taxpayers who have filed annual returns are not available, the commissionerate should continue the legacy audits under central excise and service tax. So therefore, the audit instructions given to the officers is to continue with the legacy audits. Therefore, you might even now see that there are a lot of audits which are undergoing for service tax and central excise from the period 2014-15 and thereafter. So similarly, if you look at one other instruction which is being given, is that it is mentioned that while conducting audit under GST, if any non-compliance of law is observed, which has repercussions in central excise or service tax period as well, then the commissioner of audit may be directed to take suitable actions under the respective law for the legally prescribed time period. So therefore, it is not incumbent upon the officer that when he comes to do the audit, he will necessarily have to do the GST audit alone. He can take up the central excise and service tax audit along with the GST audit. So this is very commonly seen while you practically deal with the officers, that they are going to do the service tax audit as well for the assessees. Now there is this audit manual which has been issued similar to the guidance which we have by ICAI, the guidelines released by the Indirect Tax Committee of ICAI in terms of GSTR 9 and 9C, an audit manual. The department also has an audit manual, GST-AM 2019, issued by Director General of Audit, and this particular module covers all these various aspects. It includes the introduction, the objective of principles of the GST audit by the department, management of GST audit, selection of registered persons, audit preparation and verification by the departmental audit, preparation of audit report and follow-up, and certain annexures and checklists also are forming part of this GST audit manual. According to me, it is important that as chartered accountants, we should get an in-depth understanding of the GST audit manual, which has been released by the Director General of Audit, because this will also give you an idea in terms of what the department is going to look into at the time of the audit, at the time they conduct the audit. In fact, this audit manual also has a detailed checklist of how an audit should be done for a trader, how an audit should be done for a service provider, how an audit should be done for a composite taxpayer. So it also has specific checklists for different types of assessees which are forming part of this audit manual, and that can really give you an in-depth insight into GST audit. Because friends, if you look at from the GSTR 9 and 9C perspective, and not only the department, but we have also to a certain extent restricted ourselves because of various practical reasons in terms of 9 and 9C, where you restrict yourself to the reconciliation statement. I'm sure most of you would agree with me that once the department had released the circular, that what is expected out of a chartered accountant in the audit is for the purpose of reconciliations. So then accordingly, the number of scope limitations which you add as chartered accountant to that particular assignment, and also a lot of time the assessees are not willing to share that kind of an in-depth data with you where you are appointed exclusively as a GST auditor. So at that point of time, you may not be able to walk through in that much detail as the department is going to walk through at the time of GST audit. And therefore, when I started my presentation, I emphasized that you can take up a pre-audit as an assignment separately for the management even before the inception of the GST audit. The benefits of the pre-audit, friends, is that number one, that if there are any adverse findings which have been made during your pre-audit, and those are set right even before the commencement of the audit by the department, then you could be saving substantial amount of penalties for the client. Because if you look practically, I'll take section 73 and 74, which are the demand and recovery proceedings under the GST law. But practically, when you look at the department officer, any finding which emanates out of a GST audit done by the department, they are imposing mandatory penalty under the law. And therefore, you will have to go ahead and fight out those penalties at appropriate appellate levels in order to get the relief. Now, if you were to voluntarily make the payment even before the inception of the audit, you may have a good case and probably you can have these penalties dropped before the departmental audit is even started. Now, look at the plan which is done by the department, the planning which goes at the departmental level. So the instructions actually come from the DG audit office. We have one of the important office, DG audit office in Hyderabad as well, where the entire software development in terms of how the risk parameters of assessee has to be decided is being fed into. So therefore, the DG audit office actually starts the risk assessment of the taxpayers and calculates the risk scores. Now, after it has done so, it selects the units for audit and allocates the audit task list to the commissionerates based on the mapping. So after it has done the analysis of the taxpayers, it prepares the list of those assessees and pushes it further to the audit commissionerates in each of the state or city. Now, audit commissionerate is allocated the audit task to circles based on the CDR mapping. So based on whatever list an audit commissionerate has got, it further divides those clients into different circles, those assessees into different audit circles. It could be based on the address of the assessee, it could be based on the size of the assessee. So depending on that, the groups are formed at the circle level, and these audit groups are then allocated assessees. Now, superintendent, which is a group, each of the superintendent selects a unit from the audit. So from the list which the superintendent or that group has been given, he selects the clients either probably in the sequential order, and issues an intimation to them in GST ADT 01. And he starts the audit activity in terms of preparing the working papers, doing the desk reviews, calculating of financial ratios. When you look into the GST audit manual, which is given by the department, they have given a set procedures in terms of what working papers the auditor is expected to collate, what ratios is the auditor expected to compute, etc. Now, once that is done, he basically visits the audit premises of the assessee, and based on all the checks which he has done, he issues a final spot memo, updates a draft audit report about each finding and objection, and records the status of each para in terms of whether accepted or not accepted by the assessee. And then it is put forth before committee of commissioners, which is called as MCM meeting. So in the MCM meeting, the draft audit report is placed for the consideration by the group of commissioners, and once the status is updated in terms of acceptance and non-acceptance by the assessee, this move forwards for the module for issuance of the show cause notice. So this is the way in which today the department is operating, even in terms of the legacy laws or in terms of the GST laws. Earlier, it was slightly different, per to say that after the GST or the service tax department was finding out whatever were the issues, it used to forward the audit report to the range. The range would then take its own time to go through what are the issues and issue a show cause notice to the assessee. So this process was time consuming. So what they did is that they have created a module for issuance of show cause notice, where the show cause notice is more than 1 crore. Practical aspect is that they're giving you a pre-consultation meeting, and after that they issue a show cause notice to you from the audit commissioner itself, asking you to represent and file a reply to the show cause notice before your concerned jurisdictional authorities for those show cause notices. And after that, your appeal mechanism, etc., is going to start. So therefore, this is the stage-wise plan which is done and developed by the department. However, the department may not necessarily audit a large taxpayer each time, and it has a facility to accredit a taxpayer similar to what they do in customs, and a taxpayer who is compliant with the tax laws, who has a fair track record of compliances, is not audited generally by the department again and again. He may not be picked up at that kind of a frequency, which a frequency of a otherwise taxpayer would be picked up. Now, so we must understand that the entire planning in terms of GST audit is happening at a national level, then being allocated to the jurisdictional GST department offices, and these officers are specialized only in doing audit. So there is a separate audit commissionerate, and that audit commissionerate is taking up the audits for the assessees, and therefore it will be very well aware of the issues which are there in that particular segment or industry. So for example, if a group of superintendent is doing an audit of a real estate client, they are very well going to be aware of what are the issues in real estate, and therefore it makes the audit even the more effective in terms of, if you look from department perspective. Now look at these risk parameters for the assessees, and I think it is important that as consultant for chartered accountant, we need to highlight that, look, you may not be filing the GST returns, and it may not entail a late fee, etc., but you definitely carry certain other risk as an assessee, because the risk parameters for the assessees are clearly set out by the department, and this is the whole basis based on which the DG audit has developed this module which we have seen in the beginning. Now look at this, some of the important points. Look at this point which says the taxpayers files inconsistently. So the returns are not being filed on time consistently. There is an inconsistency. 1 or 2 months you're filing on time, the other months you're not filing on time. You're filing your GSTR 1 returns, you're not filing your GSTR 3B returns, you're not filing your
GSTR 6 returns in time, you're not filing your ITC 04 in time. All these things are being watched by somebody, and that is something which we should understand and explain to our clients. Now, similarly, you can look at in terms of the ratio analysis which the department is looking into, especially from the ratio of turnover to the total assets. With the fake invoicing racket going high and high, I think even as chartered accountants, we need to do these kind of checks when a new client approaches us. So it is not always that the assessees are going to be transparent even to us as chartered accountants. There may be instances where they are not. So therefore, in order to safeguard yourself, you can also do these kind of analysis, what the government has specified in the GST audit manual, and that can actually give you a clear picture of what is happening in the business. Lest as chartered accountants, we definitely understand how to read the financial statements and books of accounts and understand what is happening in the businesses. But still, you can have this kind of a set checklist. Now, apart from these, you can see other instances which are important, like the taxpayer who's not filing GSTR 3B, but in their electronic cash ledger, TDS amount is being reflected. So therefore, this is another area in which it says that there is a non-compliance which is happening on the part of taxpayer. The taxpayer whose turnover increased substantially in the GST, or who has not been audited under the pre-GST era for the last 4 to 5 years. So all the new taxpayers also can get audited under GST. Right. So friends, this is all about the departmental GST audit. During whatever time is available to me, I have tried to throw open before the audience the various things which are available on the public domain, which can be used by you in terms of practically to showcase your knowledge before the client, and also how you can take up assignments in this area. Due to paucity of time, I'm not going to or will not be able to look into this GST audit manual in detail, but it is very much available, and I would suggest you to have a quick read through it to understand it better. Now, after understanding the audit under the GST, briefly let us understand the demand and recovery proceedings under the GST law, because this would be the basis for us to move further and understand the appeal provisions under the GST. Now, the demand and recovery proceedings primarily under the GST is governed by two sections, Section 73 and Section 74. Now, Section 73 deals with cases where there is no invocation of fraud, misstatement, suppression, etc. Whereas Section 74 deals with those cases where the department is alleging that there is a fraud, suppression, misstatement, etc. Now, the difference between 73 and 74 is, number one, the time period available to the department in terms of doing the assessment. Number two is the amount of penalties which would be applicable under Section 73 would vary from Section 74. And similarly, the time limit in which a show cause notice should be issued is also being given differently under both these sections. So let us now look at that. Now, from 73 perspective, the time limit to issue the order is 3 years from the due date of filing the due date to file the annual returns for the financial year. Now, I would like to pause here for a minute and say that there appears to be ambiguity in the instructions given by the department vis-a-vis the time limit which is given in the demand and recovery proceedings. And why do I say that? Because unlike the erstwhile service tax or central excise law, where the time limit used to be computed from the date of filing the annual return, it is here, or the due date for filing and returns, whichever is later. That is how the wordings were in terms of the erstwhile laws. Here it only gives emphasis only to the due date for filing of annual return. So therefore, you may not have filed your annual return, but the period in terms of assessment for the department has started to tick, because we know that 17-18, the due date for filing the GSTR 9 was February 3, 5, and 7, depending on states. Therefore, the time period for them to issue an order. So what I'm saying here, 3 years is the time period to issue an order. So therefore, February 2, 4 and 6 of 2023 is where the time ends under section 73. However, section 73 also says that a show cause notice must be issued at least 3 months prior to the time limit for issuance of order. So therefore, when you back calculate from the last date of order, you will understand what is the last date for issuance of show cause notice under the law. So the timing is given from the perspective of issuance of order, but there is also a condition that a show cause notice must be issued minimum so many months before the issuance of the order. Similarly, if you look into from the perspective of section 74, the time limit to issue the order is 5 years from the due date of annual return. So therefore, this can extend to 2025 in case of section 74, where there is a fraud, suppression or a misstatement. Also, the show cause notice in case of section 74 must be issued 6 months prior to the time limit for the issuance of the order. So you have to necessarily follow
Silva, did we
Yeah, it's,
are we having
yeah.
connectivity issues again? Yes, I
Yeah,
can.
yes.
Friends, we are having connectivity issues. Just wait for a moment for the speaker to rejoin. Yeah, I think we have got reconnected.
Just can you confirm to me, Jain Saab, where did you last lose me? Was this on
It is on
this
this
slide?
screen only. We just lost 10 to 15 seconds only. So you can just continue with the screen.
Okay, okay, thank you. So friends, what I was telling is that there is a small difference between the way the service tax law was framed and the way presently the GST law is, and that difference is primarily, if you look into, is from the perspective that a section 74 order can be converted into a section 73 order subsequently, meaning which that assuming that an order has been issued to you under section 74 and the ground of fraud, suppression or misstatement is not upheld at a higher appellate authority, the department can very much demand the GST for the period which is within the limit 3 years. So even though they may have issued it for section 74, but they can convert it into section 73 if at all the ground for fraud and suppression and misstatement fails. Now this was not available under the erstwhile service tax law. There were judgments by the tribunals and the high courts which were both for and against the fact that a section 70 a fraud, limitation, suppression, misstatement, etc. show cause notice once issued, even if the issue is in favor of the department on merit, they would have lost it on technical ground, and even for the normal period of limitation, they were not able to succeed on the demand. So this various tribunals have different kind of decisions, and the high courts have also had different judgments on this. But as far as GST is concerned, the law itself has given the power to say that a section 74 assessment can at subsequent point of time be converted into section 73. Now what happens when you do that? The thing what is happening now from the department perspective is that you will not get a single notice under section 73. You will get all the show cause notices more likely under section 74. At least to the extent I have seen the show cause notices till date under GST, the majority of them have been issued under section 74, so as to have higher penalties that they can be imposed on you, and that is the only objective, because the limitation period, normal period of limitation, which is 3 years, is also not expired for the department, as you can see here. But still they want to issue it under section 74 so that they can have higher penalties, because in case of fraud, suppression, misstatement, the penalty can be up to 100%. Right. Now moving on to appeals and revisions. So once you have had you have received the order from the adjudicating authority, the next step which you would have to do is you would have to go for an appeal. Now, depending upon the quantum of the person from whom you have received, the officer from whom you have received the order, you would decide as to which appellate authority you would have to file the appeal. So from that perspective, if you look into the coverage which we will see in the appeals, is the hierarchy of the appeals under GST, appeals to the appellate authority, then the powers of the revisional authority, the appeal before the appellate tribunal, and certain important facts about appellate tribunal under GST, because I'm not sure if most of you know or not, but as of now there is no GST appellate tribunal. Why the same is not there, etc., we will look into it when we discuss it at greater detail. Then the appeal towards the High Court, and finally to the Supreme Court. So this is the hierarchy of the appeals under the GST law. First appellate authority. From the first appellate authority, the appeal can then move on to the appellate tribunal, High Court, and then Supreme Court. Now, in terms of the first appellate authority, appeal against the order passed by adjudicating authority will lie before the first appellate authority, and it is given under section 107 of the CGST Act. Similarly, the appeal against the order passed by the first appellate authority will lie before the appellate tribunal, and this is the second level of appeal in the GST provision, and it is governed by section 112 of the CGST Act. Appeal against the orders passed by appellate tribunal may lie to High Court, and is governed by provisions of section 117. However, cases relating to place of supply which are going to be which are going to be heard by the national bench of the appellate tribunal at New Delhi, or the regional benches which are going to be constituted in Kolkata, Mumbai, and Chennai. So these place of supply matters, instead of going to High Court, will directly go to the Supreme Court. And in all other cases, the appeals before the High Court will then lie before the Supreme Court, which is given under section 118 of the GST law. Now, the appeals to the appellate authority under section 107. So who can appeal? Any person who is aggrieved by the order of the adjudicating authority can file an appeal in form GST APL 01. Now this format of the appeal is determined and set and is given as a part of CGST rules. So there is no prescribed format in terms of, earlier it was just form ST4 used to be there. Now you have form GST APL 01. You also have a prescribed format for issuance of show cause notice and reply of show cause notice under GST. There was no set format under the erstwhile law. I'm just trying to bring out those differences between the GST and the erstwhile law for the benefit of all the practitioners when you look into the earlier laws as well. So GST APL 01, as of now, at times the portal is allowing you to file online. At times there are certain technical glitches and you are not able to file the form GST APL 01 online. So we are doing a manual submission of these appeals before the department. But otherwise the GSTN portal very much has the option to file the appeal in this form online. Now, any person who's aggrieved by the order of an adjudicating authority shall file an appeal in form GST APL 01, and the officer subordinate to the commissioner on the direction of the commissioner may file an appeal on behalf of the department. The time limit to file an appeal is 3 months from the date of communication order and 6 months from the date of communication of order in case of department. So while the SSE is given 3 months to file an appeal, the department is given 6 months to file an appeal from the date of communication of the order. Communication of order in fact becomes very important, and with the technology overtaking a lot of things, orders are at times sent by email IDs. They may be sent to the consultants, they may be sent to the assessees, authorized signatory, etc. Sometimes they would be available for download on the GST portal, but you are not able to download it, etc. So it is always better to have a acknowledgement of the date on which you have actually effectively received the communication of the order from the department. Now, if you are not able to file the appeal within the set time limit, you can file for a condemnation of delay, and the delay can be condoned only for a period of 1 month from the due date. So if 3 months, the maximum time limit along with condemnation of delay would be 4 months. And in case of department, it would be a maximum of 7 months. Now, one important thing which I felt should be brought out, because this is a part of the statute itself, is the additional grounds during the hearing. The appellate authority may allow an additional ground of appeal if it is not specified in the grounds of appeal, only if it is satisfied that such omission was not willful or unreasonable. So therefore, unlike the hitherto laws where you had that bracket of making submissions before the department at the time of grounds of appeal and then making additional submissions during the hearing, friends, I think we need to be very careful, because that option under section 1047 comes with certain conditions. So the appellate authority, the first appellate authority, should feel that such omission which you did was not willful or was not unreasonable, and you had certain logical reasoning to it, and that is where you have given it as an additional submissions. Say for example, during the period between which you file the appeal and the hearing, there are new cases which have been decided by the tribunal or by the High Court or the Supreme Court. Then in that case, such omission may be accepted. But I am not sure in all other cases whether the first appellate authority would entertain any additional submissions, even if they are not forming part of grounds of appeal, because it is specifically given in the statute. So therefore, please be very, very careful while you are drafting your appeal and ensure that all the grounds of appeal are taken. You may insert the case laws at a later point of time, but the grounds to the appeal should always be clearly mentioned in your appeal document. Now, if you have to file an appeal before the first appellate authority under the GST, it is mandatory for you to make a pre-deposit of 10% of the tax in dispute. So where the total amount of tax which is not in dispute has to be deposited by you 100% along with the fine, interest and penalties. However, the remaining tax in dispute, 10% of the amount can be deposited subject to a maximum of 25 crores at the first appellate level. Stay, the balance amount, that is 90% of the amount, is deemed to have been stayed. Adjournment of the hearing, not more than 3 adjournments are going to be granted, and that is again specifically provided. So these all which were otherwise known to us by virtue of the set proceedings and the set procedures under the law are now specifically given under the GST law. So we knew that no more than 3 hearings would be given to a case, but that is now specifically mentioned under the GST law. Decision of the appellate authority. The appellate authority, friends, should be issuing an order with proper reasoning. So it is incumbent upon the officer, the appellate authority, to issue a speaking order, and it must be communicated to the parties to appeal if possible. So here I said that earlier deadlines were shall. Here it says that if it is possible, the appellate authority may within 1 year from the date of filing an appeal give a final order. So it is not mandatory, but it is suggested that an appeal must be disposed of within 1 year from the date of filing. The appellate authority, the first appellate authority, can either confirm, modify, or annul the decision or the order, but shall not refer back the case to the adjudicating authority that passed such order. So this is normally called remand, friends. So earlier remand, there was no specific provisions, and there were contrary judgments wherein the Commissioner Appeals was allowed to remand a matter. Some held that Commissioner Appeals cannot remand the matter, etc. But now under the GST law, again very specifically given that the first appellate authority cannot remand the matter back to the original adjudicating authority. He can either confirm, modify, or annul the decision. And where the modification is such that it results in a higher penalty or a lower refund or a lower eligibility of input tax credit, then in that case, first the assessee must be given an opportunity of being heard and a show cause notice must be issued. So only if the modification is to lower the liability or increase the refund amount, in that case it is not mandatory to again go through the proceedings of principles of natural justice. You can issue the decision and you can issue the order. Now, in terms of the hierarchy to whom you have to file an appeal. So say, for example, after the audit has been done, depending on the quantum of exposure, the show cause notice may be issued to you either by the deputy commissioner or the assistant commissioner, or by the additional commissioner or the joint commissioner. Now, if the order is passed after the adjudication process is over by the deputy commissioner or the assistant commissioner, then the appeal lies before the JC appeals. So you have to file an appeal before the joint commissioner appeals. However, if the order is passed by the additional or a joint commissioner, then the appeal will lie with commissioner appeals. So you have two hierarchy at the appellate level. Earlier, you had only from adjudicating authority directly commissioner appeals, or the matter would go to tribunal. Whereas in this case now, it would either go to joint commissioner appeals or it would go to commissioner appeals. So there would necessary, your first appellate authority would be either JC appeals or commissioner appeals, and the case will not go directly to the tribunal, right? So this is about the first appellate authority, friends, under the GST law. Now, powers of the revisional authority. Now, again, this is a concept borrowed from the state VAT laws. The concept of revision of orders was not heard before in the central tax, whether you talk about customs, whether you talk about central excise, whether you talk of service tax. The revisional authorities, the concept was not existing in those laws. But now under the GST, because a lot of these statutes have been imported, have been taken from the VAT laws, state VAT laws, there is also a concept of a revisional authority. And friends, this according to me makes this entire process of demand recovery adjudication more and more complicated. Now, the revisional authority under the GST is the commissioner of the central tax, state tax, or the UTGST. When can a revisional order be issued? A revisional order can be issued by the commissioner where the order is found erroneous insofar as it is prejudicial to the interest of the revenue. So merely because it is an erroneous order, he cannot suo motu, revise it. The error should be such that it is prejudicial to the interest of the revenue, and it is illegal or improper, has not considered certain matters or the observations of C&AG. So if it has not considered all the facts and there are newer facts which the commissioner would like the order to consider, etc., then in that case there is a scope for revision of such orders. Let me give you an example, a classic example, say of Krishi Kalyan Cess. Now Krishi Kalyan Cess, assuming that you are going to get a favorable order, this is what the authorities are saying, that assuming that based on whatever are the submissions at this point of time, we even drop the matter in terms of Krishi Kalyan Cess, education cess, and secondary higher education cess eligibility in Tran 1, or for that matter, even if you take the case of refund, even if we are going to issue an order which is very clearly in your favor, you may have an order which will be issued by the commissioner because he has a revisional authority under the law. So that is very much possible. In fact, certain of our cases which I have come across is that wherever the refunds have been processed, so you may have got a final sanction order. Now, after that, the C&AG has taken up the verification of the refund documents at the end of the department. And whether it is by the state officer or by the central officer, the C&AG has done the audit and pointed out certain mistakes which have been done by these officers. Now, those mistakes may be actually a mistake, or something like, for example, the refund of capital goods has been given. So in those cases, C&AG has given certain observations. So what is going to happen? You've already received the final sanction order. So is it that nothing can be done by the department? No, very much. They have the revisional authority, and the commissioner can issue a revision order based on the observations of C&AG. So that is very much possible, and that is very much going to happen in time to come. Now, revision of the order cannot be done if the order is subject matter of an appeal. If an appeal has been filed against an order, then in that case, the revision order proceedings cannot be initiated, or the time limit to file an appeal has not expired under the respective sections. In that case, also the revision of the order cannot be undertaken. If 3 years have lapsed from the date of passing of the order which is sought to be revised, so if 3 years from the date on which the original order has been passed, in that case also it is not possible to pass the revisionary orders. And you have already done the revision once. Having done revision once for an order, you cannot once again revise that order. So it can be done only once. Now, the revision authority must serve a notice under GST RVN 01, which is again prescribed under the rules, and a summary order under GST APL 04. So, the order of the revisional authority, which what is issued, is also an appealable order. Now, what are you going to do? So, any person aggrieved by an order under section 108 by revisional authority may file an appeal before the appellate tribunal against such order, right? Now, moving on to the understanding. Okay, one important thing here is the revision order may pass. The revisionary authority may pass an order on any point which has not been raised, in an appeal. So, if a matter or any point which has not been raised in an appeal, the revisionary authority may pass an order before the expiry of 1 year from the date of such order in such appeal, or before the expiry of 3 years, whichever is later. So if there is any point which is not taken care at the time of filing the original order, that also can be raised by the revisional authority under section 108 subject to the time period which is specified. Now, moving on to the next part of our understanding of appeal mechanism under the GST law, which is the appellate tribunal. So, the matters from the first appellate authority or from the revisional authority, because understand that the revisional authority is commissioner. So therefore, your matter cannot be heard by JC appeals or commissioner appeals, as they are at the same rank. So a revisionary order or the order from the first appellate authority will move to the appellate tribunal. Now, the appellate tribunals have been divided in this following manner. You have the national bench of the appellate tribunal, which will be sitting at New Delhi. There are 3 regional benches which have been decided. One would be in Mumbai, Kolkata, and Chennai each. And apart from that, there would be state bench in each of the states. Some northeastern states, all states put together, there is going to be one state bench. So similarly, there can be an area bench. That is, there can be more than one bench in a particular state. Say, for example, in Andhra Pradesh, if I know that there is going to be an area bench in Visakhapatnam and also in Vijayawada. So apart from the capital where the state bench could most likely be there, you may also have area benches in the other cities. So this is how it has been decided under the GST regime. Now, why national bench and regional bench? Now, the issues which are pertaining to place of supply cannot be heard by a state bench or an area bench. So therefore, the matters which are pertaining to place of supplies will either be heard by the national bench or the regional bench. Now, who can appeal before the tribunal? Any person who is aggrieved by the order passed by the first appellate authority can, or by the revisional order, can file an appeal before the tribunal in form GST APL 05. What is the time limit to file an appeal? The time limit is similar to the time limit available at the first appellate authority level. That is 3 months from the date of communication of the order of the appellate authority, or 6 months from the date of communication of the order in case of appeal which is to be filed by the department. Apart from this, there will be also memorandum of cross objections, MOCO, which can be filed within 45 days of the receipt of the notice that an appeal has been filed in form GST APL 06. So if the assessee has gone for an appeal, then the department would file a memorandum of cross objections and it has a time limit of only 45 days. If the department has gone for an appeal, then the assessee will file a memorandum of cross objections and the time limit is 45 days from the date of receipt of the notice in APL 06. The appellate tribunal may extend the date of filing for a further period of 3 months and 45 days in each case, as the case may be, for filing of the appeal. So condemnation is possible for a further period of 3 months or 45 days respectively. Now, the amount of pre-deposit, now this is very substantial under the GST law. The amount of pre-deposit almost which you end up paying is 30% of the entire tax dispute. Because originally, if you look at the first appellate authority, we have to pay 10% of the pre-deposit. And at the appellate tribunal level, you have to make a further pre-deposit of 20% of the remaining tax in dispute, subject to a maximum of 50 crores, which would be in addition to the pre-deposit already made before the first appellate authority. So there is a substantial amount of cost involved for one to go into appeal. So apart from this, once you have made the payment of pre-deposit, the balance amount is deemed to have been stayed. Similarly, adjournment of hearings, a maximum of 3 adjournment is possible. And the tribunal also should try as much possible to pass an order within 1 year from the date of filing an appeal. Appellate tribunal may amend the order on its own accord, or if it is brought to its notice by the parties to appeal, within 3 months from the date of order, if the error is apparent on record. Now, what is error which is apparent on record? there are set judgments again and decisions of the tribunal and of the courts, which determine and say what is an error apparent on record. Can an arithmetical error or a clerical error only be an error apparent on record? Or if there are certain grounds which you have put forth before the tribunal at the time of hearing, which is not being considered in the order at all when the tribunal has passed, can that also be called as an error apparent on the face of record? Can also is not defined in the GST law, but you can look into the erstwhile decisions and the judgments. Now, for filing an appeal before tribunal, you need to make a payment of fees. So the first appellate authority, there is no fee which is required to be paid. However, if you want to file an appeal before tribunal, then the fee is rupees 1,000 for every 1 lakh of rupees or ITC or difference of tax or ITC, fine or penalty, subject to maximum 25,000. However, no fees is required to be paid for application for rectification of order. In all other cases where you want to restore an appeal, where you want to file an appeal before the tribunal, there is a fee which has to be paid. You should note that this fee is given under CGST law. So there will be a similar fee under the SGST law as well. So therefore, on overall basis, rupees 50,000 is the maximum fee which you will be ending up paying before the tribunal. Now, the orders of the appellate tribunal. One striking difference between the orders of the appellate tribunal and the orders of the adjudicating authority, the first appellate authority, is that the first appellate authority cannot refer back the case to the original adjudicating authority. However, the tribunal can refer the case back to the original adjudicating authority or the revisional authority. It can either confirm, modify, or annul the decision or the order. Now, we have discussed so much at length about the tribunal, but what is the reality in terms of GST? In terms of the reality, today as we speak, we do not have a GST appellate tribunal. What is called as GST-AT is not yet constituted. Why is it not yet constituted, even though we are almost 3 years past the implementation of GST? More than 3 years past the implementation of GST, is because the constitution of the tribunal was challenged in a writ petition which was filed before the Madras High Court. Now, the constitution of the appellate tribunal is 1 member technical from the state jurisdiction, 1 member technical from the center, and 1 judicial member. So therefore, a writ petition was filed on various counts before the High Court. One of the important things was that the constitution of the appellate tribunal is ultra vires because the number of judicial members are less than the number of technical members, and which is not allowed. So therefore, for this very reason, the constitution of the GST appellate tribunal has been struck down by the High Court. Apart from this, the technical member can be from Indian legal service with certain 3 years of experience. That is the criteria which is given in the law. So that also has been said that the member of an Indian legal service should not be a technical member, and lawyers with more than 10 years of experience in that field should be allowed to be a member technical at the tribunal level. So these were the various issues which were raised before the writ petition, most importantly being the constitution of the tribunal, and the High Court held that it is not as per the provisions and is ultra vires, and has struck down that entire provision. So therefore, because of that, today we are not able to decide the constitution of the appellate tribunal. Let us hope if there are going to be any changes in the law, as the budget is set to be presented tomorrow. We are not sure if these changes would form part of the budget, but yes, if these changes do form part of the budget, we can expect the tribunal to be set up as early as possible. As lot of appeal matters are now, basically lying and for us nothing to do, especially in case of refunds. Because if you want to bypass the appellate tribunal level and go to the High Court, Again, it becomes difficult to admit the appeal before the High Court because obviously the appellate tribunal has not yet heard the matter. It becomes even the more clear when you look at the removal of difficulty order which was issued, wherein it was stated that where the appeal has to be filed before the tribunal within 3 months or the 6 months, as we discussed, the said appeal has to be filed before the tribunal either within 3 months from the date of communication of the order or 6 months from the date of communication of the order, or the date on which the president or the state president, as the case may be, of the appellate tribunal after its constitution enters the office. So therefore, the time limit has been extended by the removal of difficulty order, and accordingly now you are not basically able to file any appeal before the appellate tribunal since it is not formed. And obviously the High Court may most likely not entertain the case. You may file a writ petition before the High Court, but you will have to prove substantial grounds to admit an appeal before the writ petition before the High Court. Else you will have to wait for the appellate tribunal to be constituted. In fact, the board has issued a circular directing all the appellate authorities to dispose the pending appeals expeditiously without waiting for constitution of the appellate tribunal, because the assessees anyways have the time for making an appeal before the tribunal. So what is the need for the first appellate authority to not being disposing the appeal? So they've said you start disposing all the appeals now and do not wait any further. So this was the brief background about the appellate tribunal. In fact, this is the main place where things are stuck. And once the GST audits, which have started almost, as I told you, in a lot of jurisdictions for 1718 and 1819, once those show cause notices are going to be adjudicated and the first appeals are going to be filed, people would be waiting, the assessees would be waiting to file an appeal before the tribunal. So I think we can expect something in this budget, but we have to wait and watch for tomorrow. Now, another very, very important and significant thing which is mentioned in the law is that where an amount is paid, where the amount has to be discharged. So the case has been heard by the appellate tribunal, or by the national benches or the regional benches of the tribunal, and the order has been passed against you. Then, notwithstanding the fact that you are going to prefer an appeal before the High Court or the Supreme Court, you will have to make the payment of the tax. You will have to necessarily make the payment of the tax, notwithstanding that you are going for an appeal. So 100% of the amount of tax, penalty, etc. needs to be discharged post the passing of the order by the national or the regional benches of the appellate tribunal or the state or area benches of the appellate tribunal. So this provision was not there earlier. You would have to file an application. The High Court would have the power, the Supreme Court would have the power to basically stay the proceedings. But under the GST law, that kind of provision is not there. And section 119 clearly states that you need to make the 100% payment after the tribunal level. Again, this has to be seen because this may cause a lot of hardship to the assessees, especially where the laws are in terms of something which a tribunal cannot be decided, something where the act is ultra vires, the the rules are ultra vires, or the act is ultra vires, what the concept is. And those instances are numerous under the GST law. At that point of time, because the tribunal cannot strike down the law, and you may not get a favorable order, you might end up eventually paying 100% of the tax, despite you might have a good case. So look at capital goods in case of refund. So if by erroneously you have been given the refund of the capital goods, you may not have a case probably even at the tribunal level, because the rules are clearly mentioned that you cannot get the refund of capital goods. So you will move on to the High Court. But whatever is the erroneous refund which you have got, you need to pay it back with interest, with penalties, before proceeding to the High Court or the Supreme Court. Now, another important thing in terms of interest on refund of pre-deposit, which is given under section 115. So whatever pre-deposit which you have made, so you made a pre-deposit of 10% at the first appellate level, and then you made a pre-deposit of 20% at the second appellate level. So when an amount has been paid by the appellant is required to be refunded consequent to any order of the authority or the appellate tribunal, interest shall be payable from the date of payment of the amount till the date of refund of such amount at the rate specified under section 56, which is 6%. However, if once you have filed an application and the refund is not processed within 60 days, then in that case, you should be eligible for a 9% refund after the expiry of 60 days. But when you read section 115 in conjunction with section 56 and notification 13 of 2017, friends, when you read all these three together, it does not very evidently come out that you will be paid interest right from the date on which you made the pre-deposit till the time you have been refunded the amount. There is an ambiguity in drafting of section 56 and the notification 13 of 2017 when you read with section 115. But section 115 is very clear in that way, and it says that you should be eligible for the interest from the date of payment of the pre-deposit. In fact, that is very much important because the amount of pre-deposit which you end up paying under the GST law is way higher than what you would pay under the central excise or service tax regime, where the maximum at the first appellate you would pay 7.5%, etc. So in that scenario, I think this is very welcoming provision, section 115, but practically how things are going to happen, one has to only wait and watch. Right? Yes, but it is very important that you file an application after receiving such order, because from 60 days after the date of application, you will be eligible for a higher interest rate of 9%. Now, appeal to the High Court. Appeal to the High Court. So once the appeals has been disposed of at the tribunal level, if it's a place of supply issue, it wouldn't go to High Court, it would directly go to Supreme Court. In all other cases, it would go to the respective High Court. So the time limit to file an appeal before an High Court is within 180 days of receipt of the order by the aggrieved person, which can be extended if sufficient ground is shown. The matters which will be heard by the High Court is the specifically substantial question of law. So after that, any other issue which can be to be taken up, which is not determined or wrongly determined by state or area branches, can be taken up by the High Court, and the person aggrieved by the order passed by the state or area bench of appellate tribunal can file the appeal. However, I think at this juncture, it is not very important to look into section 117 currently, because we are still to get the orders from the appellate tribunal. The appellate tribunal is to be formed. So that is the main concern for us as we speak today. Then you have the appeal to the Supreme Court. Persons, as I told you, national or regional bench of the appellate tribunal, you need to make an appeal before the Supreme Court. And if any person who's aggrieved by the order passed by the High Court needs, which certifies it to be a fit case for appeal before the Apex Court, needs to make an appeal before the Supreme Court. But yes, you need to make the payment of all the taxes before you move on to the Supreme Court. Right. Friends, with these are the major appeal provisions which are given in the law, and at this point of time, the online filing of appeal is not started. Manually, the first appellate authority have started to hear the appeals, and they have started to dispose of the matters. Certain cases we are yet to get the adjudication is not yet done, because the audits have just to start, and there is ample time limit available with the department. We are still in 2021. They have time until 2023 and extended period of limitation up till 2025. So I think there is a long way to go before the entire appellate proceedings start under the GST. But yes, it has started. The initiations have happened. The departmental audits have commenced. And apart from that, in case of refund issues, nevertheless, you have the opportunities to file an appeal before the first appellate authority and the appellate tribunal. So this is the brief background of the departmental GST audit, appeals and revisions under the GST law. And if there are any practical questions which you would like me to answer, I'll be happy to take it now. Dugarji and Mr. Murli.
Yeah, Radhika ji, I'm just coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll stop the presentation.
Yeah, I will just see if there are any questions and we can take those. Just give me a moment.
No problem.
Okay, members are asking how to download the PDF file of the seminar. It will be circulated to you through email actually. So you can pull that from that actually. Now, one question from CA Shanmuga Sundaram. What are the records to be maintained by the registered person who gave option under composition return for the purpose of GST audit?
A composition taxpayer?
Yeah. I just flashed the question on the screen as well.
Yeah. So as I said that the records which are to be maintained by composition taxpayers obviously includes whatever are the supplies which you have made, whatever are the purchases which you have made, your way bills, etc. But yes, if you want to look at the specific checklist which the department is going to follow in case of composite taxpayer, that is available in the GST audit manual. Let me see if I can grab my hand on it and show it to you. So just allow me to present my
yeah,
screen.
I will give you the rights. Yeah, give me a moment, 1 second. I'll do it. Yeah, now you can share your screen.
Yeah. Is this visible?
Yes, very much.
Yeah. So if you look at this is the entire audit manual. It is a 138-page audit manual given by the Central Board of Indirect Tax Customs, the Director General of the Audit. And there are various annexures which are forming part of this manual, as I told you. Some of these are the master files which have to be maintained by the departmental officer when they come for audit. But one such important checklist which you have asked, you can look at these annexures, which is the checklist for audit of composite dealers and the checklist for audit of the traders. So if you look at composite dealers, this is the checklist of composite dealer, source documents which are going to be looked into, and the ratio computations and the understanding of the ratios. So this is what is going to be looked into.
We will circulate it to all the members as well.
Sure, definitely. We'll share this also with you, sir. So if you look into from the perspective of, if a broad perspective, if I give what the department is normally doing under the GST law, is it is actually trying to tie up the records from the income tax perspective and the GST perspective. And I'm sure vice versa is also happening with the income tax department as well, with Form 26AS now reflecting what is your turnover under the GST and specific requirements to be given in the income tax audit report by the chartered accountants. So all these things are basically being tied up by the department. And I have had a very surprising incident to my note when I did a GST audit recently with the department, wherein a notice was issued to the chartered accountant who has filed the income tax audit report to come and explain as to what are the things he has given in the income tax and why they are not matching with the GST. So that was to my surprise, where the chartered accountant was being given notice by the department. Though I have not looked into the greater details in terms of whether they can do so and etc. But yes, they are practically doing so, and they are asking questions as to why your income tax records and GST records are not tying up. So for a composite taxpayers, definitely you need to ensure that your income tax, whatever you have submitted, should match with the GST, or you should have the reconciliations available, because as of now the GST audit for the thresholds less than 5 crores is not required to be done. So 99C is not applicable, 9A is not applicable. So in that kind of a scenario, it becomes even the more important that you do a pre-audit before the department actually comes for a audit of the assessee.
Yeah, can I take the screen right so that I will
Yeah.
share the question?
Yes.
The next question is by CA Rajesh Agarwal. One, the department is asking tally backup in pen drive. Can they do so? Two, the details needed by them are not being given in writing but verbally. So basically, they are trying to extend commencement of audit. So can we assist that they issue a letter for the checklist?
Yes, the department can seek the records definitely. A pen drive, instead of pen drive, you may have to give them a hard copy of it, but that really does not matter. Yes, but very importantly, it cannot be verbally. So they have to issue the notice under, as I said, GST ADT 01 if they want to commence the audit or verify any records. So orally, I wouldn't really encourage you. In fact, I said that there are a lot of times you will even receive email to your ID as a consultant that okay, for such and such client you give so and so data, etc. So we do not encourage that kind of a communication from the department, and especially if it's from the central department, then DIN is also a mandatory requirement. State department anyways, DIN is not being followed. So to that extent, you should definitely ask for the documents, and orally, I do not encourage you to submit the documents, and also be very, very vigilant in terms of who's asking you the document. Believe me, there have been instances. I would not like to put everything on record, but yes, there have been instances. If you have looked at, there was this movie of Akshay Kumar, right? I'm not able to recollect, Special 26 kind of a thing. So ऐसा हो रहा है, GST, it is happening. People are showcasing themselves as GST officers while they may not be so. So be very careful in what data to whom you are giving, and whether that person is having the authority under the law to ask you such data. Be very, very careful to that extent.
Yeah, next is by CA Murli Krishna. He says, please see slide 24. How the appeal fee of rupees 50,000 arrived as maximum fee.
Yeah, so sir, as I said, Murli Krishna ji, that we are looking at the CGST law when we are reading it. So that is 25,000. Then SGST law is again 25,000. So from that perspective, I said that 25,000 under each of these heads would make it 50,000. So even if you look at advanced ruling application, the fees is 5,000, but 5,000 under CGST, 5,000 under SGST. So a total of 10,000 rupees is the application fee for filing advanced ruling application.
Your next question is by CA Venkateshan Annie. In Spice Plus form, the GST registration is not received, but company registered 150 days back in MCA. Search with SRN in GST website says details not yet received from MCA. What will we do? Several times complaint lodged in MCA, but no response. Any solution available for this in GST?
I am actually not aware of this, Jensa, because only into the GST law practice. So I'm really not aware about the MCA this thing.
Okay.
But according to me, GST registration must be separately applied for. That's what at least we do
So
in
now
case
it
of
is
new
automatic.
companies.
PAN number, GST all comes automatically. So somewhere when there is a
Automatically,
hiccup,
yeah. But the linking of the Aadhaar, etc., with the linking of the Aadhaar and physical verification of the premises, which the officers are doing now under the GST, I think it will not come on its own. You may have to actually apply it through the GST portal as well. That's what I can broadly think of as a reason, because the linking of Aadhaar, etc., is also a mandatory thing, and a physical verification of the premises is also being carried out by the GST department.
next question is by CA Jagdish Velan. What is the time
Yeah.
limit before filing appeal before Supreme Court?
So the appeal filing of time limit before the Supreme Court is not given under the GST law, and it is governed by the other normal proceedings under the law, and it is not specifically given under the GST law.
Next is by CA Vijay Shivaji. Department officer calculate the time limit for completion of audit from last date when we provided the requirement. Is it correct?
Department officer calculated the time limit for completion of audit from the last date when we
Provided the requirement, probably the last set of
yes.
papers.
So as yeah, so I'll just present the screen now, Jensa.
Yeah, I will just give it back to you, the rights.
Yeah.
1 second.
Just 1 moment.
Yeah, I'll give you the rights. Just give me a moment. Yeah, you can take over.
Yeah. Just 1 moment. So if you can see the explanation which is given under section 65, it very clearly says that for the purpose of this subsection, the expression commencement of audit shall mean date on which the records and other documents called for by the tax authorities are made available by the registered person, or the actual institution of the audit at the place of business, whichever is later. So even if you have given all the documents, but the actual institution of the audit at the place of business has happened at a later point of time, then commencement of the audit in 3 months from that date would be computed. So the officer is very much right in saying that from the last submission, 3 months is the time limit available to him. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, the next one is there a provision to waive the pre-deposit by the first appellate authority, CA Pavan Raman?
Unfortunately not. Unfortunately not. There is no authority given under the law to waive off the pre-deposit. The pre-deposit has to be basically, mandatorily made, and it cannot be at the discretion of the appellate authority. That is not there under the GST regime. So you have to make the 10%, then the next level you have to make the 20%. Until the time you don't make those payments, your appeal will not be admitted. So therefore, within those prescribed timelines, you need to ensure that you arrange for the pre-deposit amount and make the pre-deposit payment.
Next is by CA Praveen Kumar. Taxes paid through DRC 3 on the basis of audit memo issued. Can a shelter under section 73(5) be taken to avoid demand of penalty under section 74?
Unfortunately not, as I told Praveenji a little while back, that the department is always insisting for the penalty, they are issuing it under section 74. So therefore you cannot take a shelter under 73(5) when the notice is issued under section 74. So that is not possible, and this is very much being done. I would say it is a sort of a mischief also at some times, which is being done by the department, because there may really not be a case of fraud or a suppression. In fact, I will tell you one case which happened with us, that there was an extra zero which was passed while taking an ITC credit in the ledger. at the time of filing the GSTR 3B. However, such ITC was never used and it was reversed in the very next month. That ITC, whichever was taken extra due to clerical error, was reversed. But still a notice has been issued under section 74 that there is a suppression, fraud, misstatement, and so on and so forth. So now in that situation, when you have explained that it was only a clerical error, it was reversed, it was never utilized, it was unintentional, they still put a demand under section 74. In service tax, they were afraid to do that because if the fraud, suppression and misstatement would not be upheld, and the department would say that there is no case of fraud, missuppression here, and the entire liability is quashed, then they have nowhere to go, because they cannot even demand in the normal period, even if it is falling in the normal period of limitation. So therefore, after the change which is brought under the GST law, the audit officers have become more powerful and are therefore issuing notices under section 74 without even looking at section 73. I can say 9 out of 10 cases will be under section 74 under the GST audit.
Next is by CA Vishwanathan K. Is there any specific procedure for issue of SCN? Recently, there was a MP High Court decision on the same. What are your views?
So, sir, in terms of issuing a the procedure for issuance of show cause notice, as I said, there is no set procedure which is given under the law, like it is given for the purpose of order. But yes, there are time limits which have been given, which needs to be adhered to. I'm not aware of the MP High Court decision which you are quoting. Probably I'll have to update myself with that High Court decision. But as far as GST is concerned, there is only a form of in which a show cause notice can be given, and the reply to the show cause notice has to be given in that form. Apart from that procedure, the fact that the audit officer should mandatorily hear you, give you one hearing before he issues a show cause notice, these are not given anywhere in the law. And especially where it is less than 1 crore, you will not get a pre-consult or anything. Directly after the audit has happened, an audit memo is issued to you, and you are issued after the final audit report directly the show cause notice.
Yeah, next is by CA Venkatashuriam. Can the appeal be paid through ITC or is it only through DRC3?
No, the appeal fee cannot be paid through ITC. You can make the pre-deposit through ITC, but you cannot make the payment of appeal fee through ITC. That is not possible.
Yeah,
In fact, there is one important thing which I just give me one moment, sir. In terms of show cause notice, which the question the gentleman has asked earlier, in terms of best judgment assessment, the department has given a circular. Let me check if I can pull that out for you. That is something which is important for the government to follow and by the departmental officers to follow. Whereas we have seen a few cases where the orders have been passed ultra vires those the provisions of the law, and even ultra vires the circular which has been issued by the department. Just give me a moment, sir.
Yeah, can we end this question? One more is there, so that I'll share the screen with you. Yeah,
yes, and then I will show it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, there are 2 questions we can take and then you can show that.
Sure.
See, Arun is asking, disputed tax is payable under section 119, even if assessee won the case and the department went on further appeal.
No, if you have won the case, then you do not have to pay the disputed tax. If you have lost the case and you want to go for a further appeal, then you are required to make the payment of the entire disputed tax before you go to the appeal before the High Court or the Supreme Court.
The last one, while verifying the books, department officer rely more on GSTR 3B rather than GSTR 9 and 9C audit. Is it proper? CA Vijay Shivaji.
Yeah, so sir, actually the departmental officers, as I told you, the set reports, if you look at the process flow which I gave you, so for all the assessees, they get a set report from the DG audit department, and those departments actually give them total reports in terms of what is the GSTR1, what is the GSTR3B file, what is the mismatch between 1 and 3B, all of this. I think to the extent which I have been able to peruse through the reports which the officers have pulled from this software which they have internal use, the GSTR 9 has not yet been enabled with that. But yes, they definitely look at GSTR 9, 1 and 3B, but the reports which they are available with them is mainly from the perspective of the differences between GSTR 1 and 3B and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I'll just give you the presenter rights if you can.
Yes, just give me 1 minute. So this is important questions which time and again has been asked, though it is not very much related to the current topic which we are in. But yes, if you asked me the procedure to be followed in case of issuance of show cause notice and order therefrom, in case of non-filers especially, you have this circular 129 of 48 of 2019 dated 24th December 2019, which gives in detail in which the proceedings have to be carried out in case of a non-filer of a return. So instead of directly issuing the best judgment assessment in form ASMT 13, there is a notice which needs to be issued, etc. All that has been given here, because there have been divergent practices which are being followed, especially where your jurisdictional office is a state office, etc. So there the problems are coming. So there is a standard operating procedure to be followed by the department in case of non-filers of returns, and direct attachment of the bank account. All these things which you are facing can definitely be questioned in a proceedings where this SOP is not being followed by the department.
So Radhika ji, thank you so much. In fact, there are more doubts
Yes.
clarified from the just the relevant topic also. So a lot of clarity to members, and this material as well as the recordings will be sending the email later to you. Also in the website under the past programs category, you'll be able to see that in few days time. So I thank all the members. In fact, there are 200 plus members who have been with us till the end to see that the benefit is gained by them. So Radhika ji, thank you so much. And we're waiting for someday to invite you to SARC Chennai and then Madurai as well, so that you could address members in physical mode.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure.